Everyone. Okay, good morning and welcome to the July 10th meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. I'm Jim Cooper, Chair. Let's go ahead and do a round of introductions for the record. And as soon as I can see the screen again, I will. There we go. Okay, Michael.
Hello, Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner.
Other Michael.
Michael Stedman, City of Lacey. Thank you.
Dave
Tobin, Pacific County Commissioner.
Randy
Netherland, Mason County Commissioner.
Emily.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Emily Klaus, Thurston County Commissioner.
And our esteemed Vice Chair.
Greg Brotherton, Jefferson County Commissioner.
Great. Jeff, can you introduce the staff?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Jeff Johnston, Executive Director at ORCAA, and I'm joined in the room here today by Mike Schultz, Compliance Manager, Odell Hadley, Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Lynn Harding, Financial Services Manager, Chris Kraus, IT System Administrator and running Zoom for us today, and Debbie Moody, Office Manager, Public Records Officer, and Tiffany Flores, Agency Record Specialist.
Great, thank you. And other Jeff, can you introduce your team?
I'm Jeff Myers from Law Lyman Legal Counsel. Mike Throgmorton, also Law Lyman. Jacob Kosh, also Law. And online we have Matthew Sonoby.
Good to meet everybody.
Thank you. So I feel like we need another Jim and another Randy so we can keep up with people. Oh my goodness. Emily, can you get another Emily?
That shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and approve the agenda. Is everyone okay with the agenda or is there a motion?
I move to approve today's agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Dave, second by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then that takes us to the chair's report, which is just two things. So we will not meet next month in August as a reminder. And then in September, at our September meeting, there will be a finance committee meeting at 9 o'clock.
Yes,
At
at 8:30.
At 8:30, there will be a finance committee meeting, and at the normal 10 o'clock, a board meeting in July, in September. So no August, finance in September. Anything else for chair reports from any of our other committees? I don't think so. Okay, great, thank you. Public comment. Do we have any public today, Chris?
Chris, can you show the list of participants?
Sure can.
I didn't see any public, so I.
Nope.
Okay. Anything that we should know about in communication?
No, we have not received anything. No.
Okay, great, thank you. So that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I also move to approve the consent agenda for.
I'll
July
second Dave's
10th.
motion.
Okay, so a motion by Dave and a second by Greg. Any questions, comments, or poll? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna have a public hearing that I think all of us are used to at this point on ORCAA Regulation 1.11 and 1.12, but the difference this time is we have a different person talking to us about it, right?
I think so.
Okay, take it away, sir.
It had always been Robert Moody for years. I'll try to live up to that standard. Might be difficult. But anyway, thank you. And basically, this is a rule that we adopt every year. Back in June of 2022, we asked the board to change the policy to get where we used to get approval to file a CR 102 from the board. We asked for it in this specific instance for this CR 102 filing every year that we could skip that rule. The board approved that in June of last year. So we didn't come to the board for the approval to file it. It has been filed. We're at the public hearing process now. And this is for ORCAA rules 1.11 and 1.12, which basically we update every year. We'll be changing it from in our rules, those two rules from July of 2023 to July of 2024. And I guess I should have said 1.11 is for a federal regulation reference date. And 1.12 is for the state regulation reference date. Same rule, same thing, it's just one's for the state, one's for the feds. And basically, we are asking that the board, have a public hearing. And then, hopefully we'll, rule that, give us the okay to, move on with this. An example of this change, again, just the date only so we can reference stuff, would be, there was a, federal rule that took effect in spring of this year, hazardous organic NESHAP rule called HON. It affects one of our facilities, a census down in Elma. And there's some rules in there that, if we don't adopt this and capture it in essence, the period between 2023 now, we would not have that authority. That would be something that, EPA could say, you know, you guys aren't inspecting and enforcing and working with the full slate of rules because we haven't updated, we're not recent in essence, we're lagging behind. So that is why every year we want to update this. We want to just capture the yearly state and federal rules that come into play. And if we don't reference the new year, we lag behind by a year, 2, 3. We used to be behind a long time ago before this came to them. So that's a lot of rambling. In essence, we're asking the board to please hold the public hearing and take action to approve the ORCAA rule that changes the date in those two rules from 2023 to 2024. We haven't had any public comment that I know of. It's gone through the SEPA and DNS and all that process. It's just basically waiting for the board to hopefully have a hearing, take action, approve it, and then we can file a CR 103. Questions?
Okay,
I'm just thinking of.
any questions? Clear what we have before us? So before I open the public hearing, Chris, can you just scroll through the pictures? I want to make
Or
sure.
actually maybe go back to the, just showing everybody.
Yeah, you can.
I don't think we, stop the share.
Or open up the gallery, whatever they do. I just wanted to make sure we had it. I wanted to acknowledge if we had any new members join before we jump into this. Okay, so Jill is here, so welcome, Jill. Just adding that, because I think without Dan in the other room, it's a little bit hard to see, and I wanted to make sure we caught people for the record. Great. So any questions on the presentation of the change in rule 1.11 or 1.12 before I open the public hearing? Okay. Okay, so I'll start the public hearing. The public hearing is open. Is there any public that would like to comment on the amendments to ORCAA Rule 1.11 or 1.12, updating the reference date from 2023 to 2024? I don't believe we have any public at the meeting. So I'll close, and there's been stated that there's no public comment electronically or via voice. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. And open it up for deliberation, discussion, and hopefully a motion from the board to adopt the reference date changes. So like if somebody wanted to make a motion, they could just say so moved when I complete this sentence. That we'd like to move to amend the ORCAA Rule 1.11 and 1.12. To change the reference date from 2023 to 2024.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Michael and a second by Dave. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. You can file the CR 103.
Think you will do.
Okay. And then when you get done with that, we'll do it again.
Yeah. Same time next year.
Yes. Okay, so we have a new business, kind of an educational item, and we'll see where the discussion might go amongst the board. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, our executive director, to talk about flame cap kilns.
Great. So Greg, I was gonna tee this up and then I'll turn it over to you because I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on it as well. But does it work for me to tee it up? Is that okay with you?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, so during the last legislative session, substitute Senate Bill 6121 passed both houses, was signed by the governor and became effective on June 6th. So the legislation made a couple changes to RCW 7815 or the State Clean Air Act, specifically adding the definition of something called a flame cap kiln, and specifying that it can be used for agricultural burning purposes or silvicultural burning purposes. So silvicultural burning is regulated by DNR, and so the legislation points to them. Agricultural burning is permits are issued by ecology and local airs. But there's a very specific requirements to qualify as an agricultural operation. So essentially, without ecology taking action to update their outdoor burning regulations, which is WAC 173-425, the use of these devices is still going to be pretty restricted. And I did learn last week a little bit more about that ecology is in fact gearing up to open up 425 for rulemaking. They're currently looking at who the stakeholders would be and haven't seen an actual schedule yet, but I'm hoping to get that in the next month or so. Again, so we'll see, but it was very encouraging that actually they were moving forward to open it. Dan, Mike, and I put together the focus sheets. Chris, could you pull up share the focus sheet? So we put this together just to capture ORCAA's thinking about the change in regulation, what's changed, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And we had a conversation with Greg about it on June 20th, just knowing Greg's interest in flame cap kilns, and so had that conversation. And Greg asked, or I guess, well, so Greg, can I hand it over to you at this point? Because you had said that you thought perhaps ORCAA Board could take a position on this. So I think the idea was to tee it up, have a brief conversation today, and see what the kind of the interest is, and then perhaps bring it back for action at a later meeting.
And just for clarification, before you jump to Greg, that position would be around the rulemaking?
Around the rule, I think it would be to encourage ecology to expedite or just reinforcing ORCAA's position that it's important to do this rulemaking in a expeditious way.
That is safe.
Of course, yes.
Great. Greg, tell us what you got.
All right. And I might not be able to contain myself to just rulemaking, but I would, I guess, love for ORCAA to be advocates, especially as we get into, that 425, the outdoor burning that's not regulated specifically by ORCAA. I still have a lot of issues with the focus sheet as presented. I think it's got some inaccuracies and reductive statements that create a paradigm that I don't agree with, and I would love ORCAA to explore a little bit more and really understand it as an organization and as a group. So, I mean, I don't think we're trying to approve this focus sheet at this point, but I think, the conflation of burn barrels and flame cap kilns is one problematic issue. I think, the definition that we use, like under the new law, the following is allowed is inaccurate to my reading. I've been reading up on the WACs, and I wouldn't presume to tell Mike or Jeff or any ORCAA staff what is our regulatory responsibility versus, not, but I mean, the definition certainly talks about a multitude of materials that flame cap kilns can be, and including mineral. That is, you can make a flame cap kiln by digging a ditch in the ground, which would be a legal outdoor burning. And it would be, and it also, when it says use of metal containers as flame cap kilns, may be used in legally recognized agricultural operations. That should probably read something more like use of flame cap kilns, including metal containers, which, meet the definition, may be used in legally recognized agricultural operations. Because of course you can create one without any metal at all. and talking about burn barrels, which have a, pushing for a definition of burn barrels, for instance, which are often conflated, but which have mechanically completely different operations. A burn barrel, I believe universally, has venting on the bottom to bring flame up and air, oxygen up, which ends up creating sparks. With no venting on the bottom to bring air in, you don't have the same need for a spark arrestor that's listed in those rules. So I think just a thorough understanding of the distinction, not conflating burn barrels and flame capped kilns. I mean, we have a picture of a burn barrel on our focus sheet about flame capped kilns. So I think there's still work to be done internally and externally. So I don't know if, but I do, I'd love to join the statewide rulemaking board, and I'm really happy to hear, Jeff, that they are opening up 4252, because I think that is critical. But I think the findings of the legislature that are in the background there apply to any flame capped kiln. I mean, I know that they're talking specifically right now about agricultural operations, which I understand the legal definition. You have to fill out the Schedule F or whatever with the IRS, and silvicultural operations. But if it's a best management practice for those operations, then we should understand, is it a best management practice for land clearing and residential permitting, residential burning, and advocate as such.
Greg, before we I'm gonna ask Jeff to respond a little bit to you before we open it up. But before I do that, can you just back up to a little bit higher level and talk about what your motivation is here and what outcome you're trying to achieve, so we're all on the same page? Because you got down into the weeds about the rules, and I just want to make sure we're in the space around where you'd like to see ORCAA go other than rulemaking on this conversation.
Largely in definition. So I think I don't know. Can we stop sharing? I can't really see anyone.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Yes.
So I'm a big biochar fan. This was based on, I think I mentioned, in State Senate Bill 6121 from last legislative session, which is the rulemaking is going into that WAC that talks about the ORCAA regulated burning, agricultural and silvicultural burning under WAC. What is it? I forget the 173-430, and also the outdoor burning that we don't do, that's more residential, and I think we occasionally touch it, but we don't, do permits for it. More, I think, mostly compliance investigations, which would be 173-425. The law quite explicitly calls out agricultural and silvicultural professional operations, and that's the rulemaking that I think is most pertinent to ORCAA. But I do believe that as a clean air agency, if this is indeed a best practice, we should understand and advocate for its rulemaking with ecology and the Clean Air Act.
And then just a remedial question: what do you use biochar for?
Well, I know that the Jamestown Slalom Tribe is working with Herman Brothers to create a project where they created biochar, and then they inserted it into cattle feed to reduce methane emissions. So it stops them from burping, and it gets that methane locked into their poo, basically, which then goes and it acts as a nutrient and helps grow things. I myself use it with agricultural applications on a hobby farm. So like my home does not qualify as an agricultural operation because we don't, we're small enough, we raise our own food. So we don't fill out the Schedule F. But we use it we put it into bedding, and it absorbs the nutrients from the urine and the feces of the animal, and it adsorbs those nutrients into it, and makes it so we can directly apply our straw with the nutrient-laden biochar. It reduces the smell in barns, and then we put it into gardens, and it slowly releases those nutrients into the fields. So it's an agricultural, I would call it a kind of a circular economy appropriate technology that makes my farm work much more in a permaculture manner. where
It
using.
sounds like the same commercial filter that people put on their refrigerator to filter the water, right? It's okay. Thank you. I appreciate.
I mean,
uh,
there's plans out there. You can create an entirely energy-free passive cooler with chicken wire and biochar and drip irrigation that will keep and they're doing these in Africa all over the place, where it keeps things a little above 42 degrees just by the adsorbing and evaporation of the water. It's an amazing thing, and it's cheap and has a lot of applications and is a climate mitigation and adaptation tool that I think should be investigated more.
Thank you. So I appreciate you letting me get a little remedial. So I hopefully everyone has the same understanding, at least right now, where we are in the conversation. I'd like to let Jeff just do a little bit of response, and then we'll open it up and see where the conversation goes. And I certainly have an idea.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Jim. And thanks, Greg, for your thoughts. I mean, certainly send us. I know we had some discussion. We sent you an earlier draft of the focus sheet, but if you've got, again, specific questions, please let us know, update that. We haven't had any questions from the public yet, but we're expecting some. And so we just wanted to have something to have some talking points. And that does kind of represent our current understanding. Certainly agree and understand that biochar has a lot of potential benefits. And so certainly want to see it used more. Again, as an air quality agency, we're also very focused on air quality. And while a lot of these devices, I don't think there's a lot of information out there. We don't have a lot of information about how they're used and whether they're, produce more smoke or less smoke. Like most solid fuel burning devices, they really depend upon how they're operated. But also one thing I don't think, there was a difference between Senate Bill 6121 and substitute Senate Bill 21. And I don't think what actually passed the legislature had anything about biochar in it. I mean, it talked about these flame cap penalties, but all of the references to biochar were removed.
It's just the methodology, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. I mean, I guess perfect my response.
So Randy, you had your hand up, so let's go to you first.
It wasn't as much a question. Just want to back up what Greg was saying a little bit. I also am a huge fan. I tried real hard to bring it into my county. Was not successful. Maybe Greg was, but either way, the education I got when I found it was pretty spectacular. One of the greatest and best ways to actually burn stuff, slash that's actually being burnt out in the woods, going into these plants and being able to truly filter it out was amazing. The lifespan of the cattle when they're fed this increases, by a minimum of a third. It changes a lot of different stuff. So if there's any way we can protect that particular entity, I'm going to be in favor and on board with it. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Randy. Other questions or thoughts? Stormwater filtration outfit. Yes, in fact, I have built still stormwater filtration with carbon or biochar. Absolutely. You can actually buy them off the shelf. Other questions or comments? Okay, so I'm gonna, unless I see somebody pop up, kind of take silence as at least support for looking at the rule-making process. Is anyone opposed to Jeff generating a memo for board adoption, encouraging ecology to make the rules and make sure that they design them so that it's there's flexibility for the landowner to be able to do what they need to do while also keeping the environment safe? Is that an okay balance for him to try to approach that from? Okay. So then my question here is, I have a significant concern about our staff being able to compare and contrast outdoor burning in different types like this. And not that they can't do it, but no one's paying us to do it. And I would very much see that if there's this kind of a distinction in outdoor burning, that we would need a tool for permitting all outdoor burning so that we can see the distinction and know when it is happening on every piece of property in our region. I don't think that there is a world where we keep permitting to just Thurston County in the future for a lot of reasons. But this, to me, highlights a big distinction that we need to make sure that we permit for and that we have some baseline, I don't want to make it cost prohibitive, but we want to make sure that people are able to know the rules and we have a little bit of revenue to be able to look at the expanded situation in that space. And I don't know if I'm putting words in our compliance staff's mouth, but I want to just check in on that before I open it up because I just dropped a bomb at the board.
No, I think that's well said. I think without going too deep, I agree with Greg. Their biochar is great in a lot of ways. But don't lose sight of the fact that the way you create biochar is not full combustion. Not, the best way to have clean air is full combustion. So there's a little bit of, yin and yang there, whatever you want to say it, that one's good and how do you get the right thing? And then from a compliance standpoint, if somebody's complaining about smoke and we go out there, okay, are we gonna deal with a 20% opacity thing? Are we gonna, what's gonna define a biochar or a flame cap kiln type thing? Flame cap kiln is really a trademark registered thing of how this company wants to have this burn in a double ringed
I
fire.
think that's Ring of Fire.
Ring of fire. I'm sorry,
that's-
that's
Flame
part of-
cap kiln is not trademarked.
No, I'm sorry, as part of that, that is what they're describing, that's what they're saying, but there's no description, that's what I was trying to get to, I wasn't saying it right. There's no description of that, so you could have a half a barrel, you could have a big tire rim, you could have a lot of different things. And is it a wash tub ring that's rusted? And keep in mind, when you heat up metal really hot too, you are releasing dioxins. There's things, those metal things aren't made clean. They at one point had oil or, some chemical in it. They weren't just made for burning. So there's a lot of factors that have to go into this. And if you're gonna ask an inspector to say, okay, is this a flame cap kiln thing, like a ring of fire, or like what maybe Greg wants to use, there has to be some definition of boundaries, or we won't know. And then again, like you had said, Jim, if we get a call, we go out there, we gotta know, is it or is it not? And then how do you get the income to do that? Because that's one of our biggest lost leaders, so to speak, is dealing with outdoor burning.
So Jeff has a follow-up to that. Before he does, though, I want to make sure that everyone knows I'm not asking for any action like this, and I would definitely want to see any outcomes of ecology rulemaking prior to a formal discussion about an action like I just proposed. But that's just where I'm coming at from. So Jeff.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo what Jim said and agree that, ORCAA doesn't have the expertise or the resources to actually do the emissions testing of looking at different devices. I mean, that's why, we'll be part of the conversation, hopefully as part of the rulemaking, that perhaps that effort would look at emissions information from different devices. But yeah, that's certainly not something that ORCAA, that we ourselves are going to be doing.
Great.
I guess I would just ask that we don't push this focus sheet out, because I really do think that, like, for instance, the statement flame cap kilns may not be used for residential yard waste burning, since looking at the definition earlier up there, you can make a flame cap kiln by digging a ditch, and it would be totally legal to burn residential yard waste in that ditch, and it is a flame cap kiln. So that statement is, just as I understand it, not factually true. I mean, you can't use a flame cap kiln for residential burning. You can't use a burn barrel, and you're conflating, at least by implication, burn barrels and flame cap kilns. Not all flame cap kilns are made out of metal. If you made it out of masonry, it would be fine.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to Jeff here.
Well, so, but, and we can talk about this more, Greg, and I'd like our attorney's thought on it, but our reading of the regulation is that the only use of flame cap kiln is through either agricultural burning or silvicultural burning, and that residential burning is not one of those two things. And so it is actually not allowed. I mean, if there's outdoor burning, residents can do outdoor burning now. So I don't know.
But that's what I was gonna say. I think there's a little bit of mix up there. You can burn in a trench now, and a lot of times that's a safe way to do it. Build a hole in the ground and burn if you're burning legally outdoor residential burn. That's okay, but that does not fall into the flame cap kiln category. So therefore it is not a flame cap kiln, it's just outdoor burning. Now, when do a definition, and that's one of the things ecology has to look at, I think, and get to where Greg's going is defining what that flame cap kiln is, and that's what I was trying to refer to before. Right now, it could be anything. It'll be an argument over is this or is this not? And hopefully the ecology world will define what that is. But I just want to say, when you're burning on the ground in a trench, by rule definition, that is not a flame cap kiln. That is an outdoor burn, and it stops right there because that's a residential burn, and no flame cap kilns can be used for residential burning.
So it definitely sounds like there's some clarifications we want to
Yes.
ask for in the
Yeah,
rulemaking
absolutely.
process from ecology, given this just language disagreement.
Yeah, the rule hasn't been updated in 20 years or many years.
So I think what I'd like to ask is that staff kind of work with Greg to draft a letter and bring back to the board. And then I generally agree, let's make sure we are tight in agreement on the language of this letter with of any flyer that we create with our lawyers. And I agree 100% with Greg. It took me to squint and read the caption on the picture to know that that wasn't properly functioning flame cap kiln. And so that's, to me, that's the imagery we should put on a picture. Okay. It's not this, it's this, so that people can be educated on what fundamentally I believe is that you can burn outside as long as you don't create a nuisance for your neighbors, right? And that's the same whether it's a kiln or an outdoor burn, but it's the material you're burning in that is that question.
As long as you're outside the UGA, I mean, following all the other.
Right, yeah, outside of the city, for sure, that makes sense, okay. Is there any other comments, thoughts, questions around that path forward? I know I've been talking a lot, but. Okay, so Greg and staff will work on a letter for one of our future meetings. And I would say if the ecology rulemaking comes out before we meet again in September, let's get a letter, or not, I mean, if the process starts working through, let's get a letter around via email so people can give Jeff feedback. And I feel comfortable that he can carry this message without a board signature right now. Okay.
Yeah, my sense is that, yes, it would, sometime this fall would be the soonest that they would convene. But yeah, I'll certainly keep you posted, and at our next meeting, hopefully we'll have more information on the timing of this rulemaking.
Okay. And I will save any further comments about region-wide burn permits for that day. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everyone. To our director's report, and we'll start with the executive director.
Okay, great. Well, like we did last month, we've switched up the reports a little bit, so I'm going first, and then I'll be followed by others from ORCAA. But before I get to my executive director update, I wanted to give you, walk you briefly through Dan's communications report. And I'll talk in just a moment. Well, actually, so Dan is not here because he's on his way up to Port Townsend. You may have seen the email that Dan pushed out. Hopefully you all actually got the email that Dan pushed out on Monday afternoon, that the Federal Agency for Substances and Disease Registry, or ATSDR, has recently released results from a health study that they did in Port Townsend in 2018, looking into the potential health consequences of emissions from the Port Townsend paper mill. ATSDR is conducting a couple public meetings this afternoon. And while Port Townsend paper is not an ORCAA source, it's regulated by the Department of Ecology. Port Townsend is certainly an ORCAA community, and I asked Dan to be at the hearing to hear community questions and concerns. And one of the recommendations from the report is additional community monitoring in the future, and certainly want ORCAA to be part of that conversation going forward. So anyway, that's why Dan isn't here. So in his report, he leads off with information about we are now in fire safety burn ban season. So Jefferson County, Clallam County, Mason County, all declared burn bans earlier this week. I think Grays Harbor starts on Friday. No, actually today, yes. Yeah, today. And Thurston County starts on Monday.
Pacific County.
And Pacific County on Friday. So anyway, we're at the point where outdoor burning is not allowed. Also, since DNR recently elevated the risk to moderate, that shuts down all land clearing burning. So, and speaking of things related to outdoor burning, find my notes here. Sorry, I lost my place. There it is. So ORCAA is one of 4 agencies that will be joining the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners for a work session on August 21st to talk about how Thurston County pushes information about both the fire safety burn bans and other things. And so looking forward to being part of that discussion. So we'll see you in August, Emily.
That sounds great. I'm excited.
And another thing that Dan mentioned on his sheet is that he organized with some others from the Northwest Air Quality Communicators in interacting with the media, or a media training class that he did for a number of us here at ORCAA and other air quality agencies around the state that he did last week. And then there's some other information on his sheet about this progress on the smoke reduction grant. Again, we're pushing out a lot of funds for people changing out their wood stoves. So, any questions on Dan's report before I to the things that I wanted to mention? Not seeing any questions, I'll just roll on. So you might have heard or seen notice that a couple weeks ago, the McKinley paper is shutting down, laying off close to 200 employees at the end of August. Certainly a big blow to the community, and I don't know, Mike might want to say more about that. But it will certainly impact ORCAA as well. ORCAA is one of our major sources, one of our 11 Title V sources, and we have, we worked very closely with the mill over the past number of years. When McKinley bought it and restarted. So sad, big news there. Let's see, you've heard Mike and I and probably others talking about the Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy Wood Pellet Facility in Hoquiam. We issued a final determination or permit for that facility on May 14th. The permit was appealed to the PCHB on June 13th, appealed by Earth Justice on behalf of 5 environmental organizations. So we'll be again working on that. Next thing I'll mention is that I was fortunate enough to accompany Odell up to Chica Peak Observatory above Nia Bay on June 25th. So actually I made myself useful by rewiring a temperature sensor.
And it's working.
That's the surprising part. And related to Chica Peak, Odell mentioned during a report last month that we received word in early May that the Clallam PUD, or from Clallam PUD, that the power line is way past its expected life, and they might not be able to keep the site energized due to the condition of the power line. And that's of course a big concern. Agency and others have recently invested a lot of money and effort in that site. And there is an FAA navigational site adjacent to Chica Peak Observatory, and it's really FAA's responsibility to maintain the power line up there. They've replaced 4 of 5 segments, but they're been delinquent on replacing the last 2.5-mile segment. So won't go into more details, but we're working closely with the other Chica Peak Observatory stakeholders and the Clallam PUD and the FAA to urge them specifically to do whatever they can to keep the line safely energized in the short term, and then in the long term to find funding to replace the power line up there. And I'll just say that the Clallam PD has been great to work with. Had conversations with a number of them there. Odell and I have been working with them, and they're basically just looking for some assurance from the FAA that the FAA will pay. And so anyway, working on that. So I'll mention that Debbie, Tiffany, and others have been very busy lately responding to public disclosure requests. We've had a couple of big ones and a bunch of small ones. So really appreciate all of the good work that they do. And Jeff, I know they've reached out to you and your team a few times, but again, important to operate a transparent agency. And so again, responding to these timely is really important. let's see, just mentioned that last week ORCA hosted the Washington Air Directors meeting, so in person. So this is the meeting, the group that gets together every 2 months, the directors from 7 local airs and Department of Ecology and a variety of other staff to talk about common issues. And as you can imagine, 7 agencies have similar missions, so there's a lot of common issues that's really helpful to get together to discuss. And this was the first time ORCA had actually hosted a meeting, and as long as anybody can remember, it's probably 15 years or so ago. So it was nice to have everybody here in the building show up, our new conference room arrangement and things. Let's see, and as I mentioned earlier, so Dan and others did the media training as part of that as well. So, and I think the last thing I'll mention is that the office will be closed for a couple hours next Thursday. We're doing an offsite staff meeting and lunch at Squaxin Park. So we've got, as I mentioned last month, we're now fully staffed. We've got a lot of new folks, and just thought an offsite, get to know each other a little bit better, would be good. So we'll be closed from like 11 to 2:30 or so. That's all I have, unless there are any questions for me before I hand it off to Mike.
Questions for Jeff? Mike French, is there any intel on McKinley as far as like, are they selling it or are they just mothballing it?
Its market conditions are really difficult for them. Their input costs have increased and their sales costs of the products they make have not had the same increase. They were hoping to weather that, deficit for a little while, but it's been going on longer than they'd hoped. So they've been losing considerable money because of those market conditions. We're working on whatever short and medium term things we can, hoping that either we could, I think it's unlikely that we could stave off the closure, but we're working on, a couple different ideas. This was a mill that was closed, I believe, in 2006 or 8, and then reopened. And they make recyclable materials. They take recyclable materials and make cardboard. And so it was kind of a big plus for our community that it actually successfully reopened some years back. And so this is kind of a double whammy for us, but.
Yeah, it's wild too, because there's a huge market on the peninsula for that organic waste. Like all of our solid waste and the for-profit companies need that facility to be able to manage the loads, and that's pretty significant. I wonder we get with like Republic or LeMay to buy that thing as a solid waste outlet. Anyway, okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then I was also curious, is there a battery backup at Chica Peak that can keep the system running for some time period?
No, we use about what's the quantity that we use I think in our letter, in terms of the amount of power we use is more than.
We average, I think, 2,000 kilowatt hours a month.
Okay.
So we do have UPS battery backups. They run for about 10 minutes when we lose power, so it's enough time to kind of.
But
longer power outages, everything shuts down. A generator is not feasible since we're measuring.
Well, I was gonna say that emergency generator.
Yeah, not really. Not for the. Yeah, because we're measuring atmospheric chemistry, having a generator isn't really logical. Also, just keeping it powered and fueled in such a remote location isn't feasible. Some of the stakeholders use significantly less power than we do and may be able to throw up a solar panel or two, and that might get them through.
But again, our battery costs would be too high.
No. We're running pumps, and those are huge power draws. So,
and if Clallam PUD were to say that it's no longer safe to keep the site energized, I mean, it could be months or even years, depending upon how long it takes funding to come through. So it wouldn't be, we're not looking necessarily at just an intermittent power outage, but actually potentially extended power.
Right. And then that involves moving.
potentially, we are exploring that as sort of our very last ditch backup. That's our least favorable option, but both the improved trailer and the Encore trailer are movable. We can put the tires back on and just haul them out of there. So it would just be a matter of finding another site that is representative and nearby. And that will host us for however long and allow us to get power. So those are all things that we would need to work with the tribe on.
And then what about our responsibilities as far as the Fed or ecology from that side? If it's down, is that hard on ORCAA? Or they just would understand that
We would have to get approval from that.
for it to be offline or moved?
Oh, moved. So that's something we would have to, because it's a federally funded site through EPA directly. Ecology wouldn't really be part of that discussion, but we would work with EPA to come up with, do we want to move it? Are we just gonna have it down? But that would be a discussion for them.
So there's no penalty for being down, it's just the movement costs or.
Well, they might not give us our grant money to run it if we're not funding
But
it.
not, not.
Right, no.
Shit. Okay. All right, well, let's hope that the land stays still. Okay. Anything else for Jeff? All right, Mike, let's talk about compliance.
All right, compliance, the highlight sheet, I think, was attached there. Happy to announce that we've had business needs for a while to get some AQS3s in our staff, and we've got some expertise and growth and qualifications of 2 individuals that meet that. So starting July 1st of this year, so a couple days ago, we have promoted Nancy Wood Sigling and Rob Wyland from AQS 2 to 3. They'll do a lot more independent work, a lot of Title V work. And since we won't meet in August, I'll let you know Bryson Downs, who's been with us for a while and is an AQS 1, he also will be promoted to an AQS 2. So they're very deserving, they work hard, they do great work. So those promotions are nice, and I'm happy to be able to do that. Land clearing burns, like I said, they've all been stopped for a while, and all the other counties by Friday, as Jeff said, will be closed. Because of that, we do have some more time to do inspections, so you should see in the following report in a couple months. The inspections will increase, and especially Title V's. This is our season, we go out and do a lot of Title V inspections, and also a lot of Title V source tests. A lot of the facilities test during this time, the big ones, and so the inspection staff will be busy with those. Engineering, AGP, we've talked a lot about that, Grace Harbor along with the PNWRE, but AGP, since we last met a month ago, they were issued their approval for their NOC application to build some more, basically a duplicate facility of what's already down there on the harbor. They store meal that comes in on rail and goes out on ship, not boat, it's their ships. So that's nice that they got that, they can begin constructing there. They finished up emission inventory, the engineers did, and that's a big thing, because when we give Debbie the numbers, and then she can bill based on the amount of emissions, so they've got that done. They've also assisted with EPSEC, which is Grace Harbor Energy there in the Satsup area, with AOP that has been worked on for a while and approved, and that's actually went through a public hearing, and now it's an EPA for review. And the final thing, the engineering thing, which is nice, but also busy, is big uptick in smaller businesses that have applied for applications lately. A lot of gas stations, paint booth, even some rock crusher type units. 13 applications came in the last 2 months, which is, not what we always see. That's a lot more than we normally see. So they are busy. They're trying to get those processed and done. Luckily, the PNWRE and AGP stuff have been moved along. Those are huge projects. So timing hopefully will allow them that. General highlights, as I said in the bottom of my compliance report, you guys have lots of AOPs should be inspected and source tests witnessed in the next few months. And then unfortunately, McKinley closing, which was one of our Title V AOP sources. We did do a source test in April with them, and we also will do an inspection in July, because it'll finish out their year. And then hopefully they'll be able to get up and running again soon, but we'll do one more inspection of them at least. And then we'll just see where it goes from there. Other than that, you guys have reports with all the NOC work and also the inspection complaints and NOVs and all that. If you have any questions on that stuff, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Mike? I just have one. What kind of smell does crown cork and seal make?
Well, you shouldn't smell anything, but if you do get a smell, occasionally there's a varnish type smell, because that's what they're doing. They're spraying the paint and the varnish. Occasionally, if the wind's just right, that's what comes
That
out.
makes sense. Thank you very much. I've only heard noise stuff at my city roll from them lately, so just curious. Okay, thank you. Let's go to air monitoring. What else?
Chris, can you pull up my slides? And share them. Okay, so June 2024, summer, the next slide. So you can see we had pretty much all good days, which is great, and our highest maximum daily values were all below 7. Port Angeles coming in again at 6.4 as the highest site, and we've talked about why that is, just has to do with the geography of the site and the meteorology. And we are still showing 2 monitors for Lacey. Back in April, we converted the BAM, which is the beta attenuation monitor, as our primary PM 2.5. But we are still using the NEF there. You'll notice we only have 19 good days on the NEF. That's because the NEF broke halfway through the month, and we went and brought it back to ecology, and we were not able to get a replacement in a timely manner, which is okay. So those NEFs are really old, and they are starting to become harder to get from them. So it's a good thing that we moved over to the BAM as our primary. We do see a little bit more noise in the BAM, and you'll also notice we're missing 5 days of data for that, and that had to do with we ran out of tape on a Friday afternoon, and that's an important component of the measurement device, and we're not able to get over there and change it until following Tuesday. So we did lose 5 days of data there. Other than that, everything looks good for air quality across our region. Next slide. This is our ozone. Remember, we are now in the summer. This is our ozone monitoring month. 70, that line there is the NAAQS, which is the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for an 8-hour average of ozone. And these are hourly averages. And you can see that we came nowhere close to that. And we didn't even go above 60, which means we stayed in the good for the entire month. You will notice there are a few days that light gray is our ambient temperature, which really drives ozone concentrations. And we did get up into the 80s a couple of times, and you can see that's where we saw the highest peaks of ozone. Nothing to be worried about. So next slide. And then other monitoring highlights. As Jeff mentioned, we went up to Chica Peak in June, and it was a beautiful day, and we got some things done. Multiple sites to visit Mountain View, and that had to do with changing out the BAM. We also have the etholometer there, and have to do monthly quality control checks on the BAM and the etholometer. This is a higher frequency of visits compared to the nephelometer, which only requires a visit once every 3 months, as long as everything is working. And then again, we also have to go monthly for ozone quality controls and type stuff. So we also had a few visits to Port Angeles to try and bring that purple air online. We did get it working briefly, and then I updated the registration, and now it's not working again. So Rob and I are continuing to work with their IT department and getting that online. In its current location, it's not picking up the Wi-Fi signal that they have specifically put aside for us. So Rob and I are going to be exploring maybe other locations on the route where it might get a better signal. And then, as Jeff mentioned, we've been having discussions with EPA, FAA, County Community, hoping to create a plan that will keep power to the Chica Peak site. So we are working on that, and we have a lot of support stakeholders. So that's what you guys got in your board packet. And then I threw on a couple extra slides since we're not meeting next month, and so it won't be until September. And I wanted to give you this information in a timely manner. So next. Oh, sorry, I skipped it. You're laughing at me.
Speaking of
So, before we get on to July, when Rob was up in Rob and Lauren went up in June to try and get that purple air online. You can see that right there, the little white cup. I don't know if you can point it out with the mouse, Chris. It's right there, yeah, keep going up, keep up, nope, not there, right there, oh, right there. So Rob went up to look at it and they found a seagull nest with eggs at the base of the monitor. We can't disturb them for legal reasons, not ideal for. And.
Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Okay.
The bird was quite angry with both Lauren and Rob, and when I asked him if he could fix that power supply and maybe make it more secure, he said, I don't know, the mom was really mad. So yeah, we're working with that, but so far it seems to be good. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so this is the extra 4th of July data that normally I would give to you next month, but we thought we'd just show you, this is our data from Lacey. We saw similar peaks at most of our sites, except for Port Townsend did not have a peak in fireworks, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if it was just the way the wind was blowing or if they really aren't shooting off fireworks there.
No
But they
fireworks in
really,
Port Townsend.
there you go. So yeah, we didn't see any peaks, but Thurston County certainly had a good share. This is hourly data, so you can see that we got right up into the hazardous for 1 hour on that night. The other thing I want to point out here is that lighter yellow, the lighter line, sort of orange color down underneath there is the nephelometer, and the dark purple line that peaks all the way up is the BAM. And so you can see a clear distinction in how those two analyzers are responding specifically to firework data, which I thought was really interesting. So we're gonna be looking at that. But then as the night progresses and whatever those fresh emissions are tend to age, then they start to agree much better with each other. But that very first burst, definitely there was a difference in how those two analyzers saw. And then in the upper right corner, that's the ethylometer data. And I show that to show that the black carbon is the lighter orange colored line on the bottom, and then the black carbon plus organic carbon is that much higher line. And that looks similar to what we would see if it was wood smoke or wildfire smoke. And so it just indicates a lot more absorbing organics are absorbing in the ultraviolet rather than in the near infrared, which looks like wood smoke, but we know was fireworks smoke. So let's move on to the next one. So following that, we had our. Yeah.
Does that correspond with the time of the commercial show at all?
That's about 10 o'clock at
Okay.
night. Yeah. How many commercial shows did we have?
So there's one, in Thurston County, there's one.
Just the one at the golf course?
At the golf course.
Okay.
On the 3rd, when less people are doing their own fireworks, there's one at Boston Harbor, one in Lacey. So I'd be curious if that spike exists on the 3rd. or
We
not.
didn't really see much of a spike
Okay.
on the 3rd. I can go back and look, but yeah, I mean, just based on what I heard at my house, there was a lot of personal fireworks going off in Thurston County on that night. So it could be coinciding with that show, but I think it was all of it. So, and then Karen. So then following the 4th of July starting, here we see that overnight, we continue to see high PM 2.5 values. The yellow and blue line are the nephelometer and the BAM, and you can see they actually agree with each other quite well now, not with that fresh stuff. And so I've been talking to Beth Friedman at Ecology to kind of determine, we know we have very hot temperatures and that can drive secondary organic aerosol formation. But we're seeing these peaks at night, so it not quite sure. Usually we associate that with the heat and the sunlight and the ozone buildup. But it's a complicated chemical soup of a lot of different things. And then if we look at the ethylometer data at the bottom, we can see on the evening of the 6th, it did look more like that wood smoke or firework smoke, where those two lines, the black carbon being red at around 900 micrograms per meter cubed, and then the black carbon plus OC at 1.5 to 2 times that, which is really what wood smoke looks like. But you can see as we move through time and those days got hotter and hotter, and we're up in the 90s, 99, 100, we continue to see PM 2.5 in the moderate, but then those two lines, the black carbon and the organic carbon, are really just lying flat on each other, indicating just a very black soot and very little organic carbon, at least the polyaromatic hydrocarbons that absorb. So I guess I just want to point out that hot temperatures and sunlight can create PM 2.5 that is not wood smoke, that is not wildfire smoke. That is something else entirely. And it can drive us into the moderate. So those hot temperatures do impact our air quality as well.
Boiling asphalt.
That's, so, that is all I have. So that's my extra for the last couple of days and the 4th of July.
Awesome. Questions for Odell? Okay, thank you. Lynn?
Oh, okay, well, good morning all, thanks for joining us. So, let's see, where do I start? Well, Jim's already mentioned the next finance committee meeting, September 11th. I need a year end for fiscal year 2024 financial report. Looking forward to sharing that with y'all. ORCAA needs to update our purchasing policy again. He just recently approved a revision to our purchasing policy in January 2024, based on new legislation that was recently passed this year. There is a section that we need to look at making some pretty significant updates to, and that's specifically the public works. So what that really means in a nutshell is that with these new compliance requirements that we have to integrate into our policies, the legislature removed thresholds that we used to follow. For instance, going out for bid, and that's going away. So basically, there's a threshold of $150,000 or less. We have to follow a certain procedure, and so that will be incorporated into our new policies. I'm not going to get into too much more with you, but we will be having our attorneys look at that prior to bringing it to the finance and then to the overall board resolution, and then the purchasing updates in a few months. I'm still learning too. So I wasn't here at the June 2024 board meeting. I just want to say thank you. Shout out to all of you for approving our fiscal year 2025 budget. Thank you. Also, thank you for approving my new financial assistant. She's wonderful. Thank you for including that in the budget. We're facing year end, and I'm just thanking y'all for year end is here. And I have assistants, and training is going very well with Laura Crawford, and so thank you. I know that Jeff had indicated last month that we have some movement with our tenant community. We have 7 rentals, and 2 of them will be moving out soon. We have already scheduled some improvements to their space that is in need now. We're gonna have some floors changed out and some painting done. So if y'all know anyone who's looking for a great small space, private offices here in our office building, great landlords, $400 a month rent, all utilities included, share the word and let them know I'm your contact. Right. I think that should do it. Again, thank you all. Any questions?
Questions for Lynn? Okay, well, it's a great sign of your work that you can be, that you're able to take health leave when you need to, and we can still adopt.
Yes.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're all welcome.
Even though you. Okay, that concludes our reports. Anything for the good of the order? Okay,
I've got one thing which is hot off the press as of yesterday. We had told you about the appeal from ACT versus Puget Sound Clean Air that the Court of Appeals had issued a decision last December saying that the board does not have to issue permits. That was appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied review of that yesterday. And so that leaves in place the determination of the Court of Appeals that you don't have to approve all notice of construction permits. And that's a very good outcome. It puts to rest that argument that had been raised by the environmental groups contending that all of your permits are ultra virus. So that is very good news.
final.
Final.
Thank you. That's great. Great.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Jeff could share with us his opinion about some of the other Supreme Court rulings that impact ORCA, you know, like the ending of the administrative state and the Chevron deference.
That's mostly going to affect the federal government and EPA's rulemaking. There was a decision that came out about the good neighbor policy and held that that went too far. I don't think that this bodes terribly well for the federal government's adoption of policy via the rulemaking process or administrative policy process. I think it's going to shift the responsibility to Congress to adopt a lot of things, and that has not been a terribly productive forum for getting anything passed because of the political divisions. The Chevron deference could be very significant in how it affects a review of federal rules and federal policies, because they're no longer going to just allow the agencies to interpret statutes and follow whatever the agency says. And so I think it's going to really reinvigorate the litigation process to challenge federal agency determinations. But Chevron deference is a federal doctrine. It really does not change how ORCA's rules are interpreted by the state courts and those sorts of things. There was another interesting decision that talked about challenges under the APA to rulemaking and when the statute of limitations runs. That one said that the statute of limitations would not run on a facial challenge to a rule until there was an injury resulting from that. So again, this was the federal APA. It doesn't directly impact ORCA, but it may sort of filter down to the state level to allow people to argue that, well, I should be given more leave to challenge application of the rules when it injures me, so longstanding rules that have been on the books, which we thought were sort of bulletproof, are maybe subject to challenge based on that decision. So that's something that we're tracking. So there were a host of things, and so those are I think are the ones that affect ORCA.
Hey, I'm sorry, Jeff, can you explain why like if a rule injures me 30 years afterwards, I can now challenge it on the federal level, but so that precedent will apply to the state courts as well?
In large terms, it was the way that the Federal Administrative Procedures Act and the statute of limitations in federal law were worded as the ability to challenge the rule arose when the quote claim accrued, and the accrual of a claim, the court said that requires there to be an injury for there to be a case or controversy under federal law and Article 3 jurisdiction for federal courts. So it's largely based on the way the statute was written. But that could filter down to accrual of claims against state agencies as well. So something to keep an eye on.
So largely rhetorical question. See graying of the separation of powers. Is there any protection for the people other than voting?
Voting is the primary protection that our democratic system continues to have. I think there are other possible ways to challenge Supreme Court decisions. I know there is a constitutional amendment to address the presidential immunity that has been proposed. Again, that is a very long-term, laborious solution. And another way to challenge that is to bring a different case and try to get the Supreme Court to reverse its decisions. And that is difficult and unlikely, at least in the short term.
So our fate is in the hands of Congress and the lawyers and the voters.
The fate is ultimately in the hands of the voters.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a hard couple of weeks, and even in the clean air world, you just demonstrated that that's happening. So vote, 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 and I think write laws that are clear. It's challenging. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? I'd like to add for the record that Councilmember Joan Cathy joined us about partway through, and I did acknowledge her, so. Welcome, Joan. Okay, hearing nothing else, we're adjourned. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you after summer.
Yep, have a great
Thank
summer,
you.
everyone. See you in September.